The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. It was the kind of heavy, gray downpour that made the city feel like it was holding its breath, mourning alongside the people who couldn't find the words to do it themselves. At the heart of Los Angeles, in a quiet cemetery tucked away from paparazzi lenses and the chaos of fashion and fame, the Forrester family gathered around a coffin that should never have been there. Taylor Hayes was dead. A car crash. A violent, senseless accident on the Pacific Coast Highway. The impact had been sudden and fatal. She'd been alone. According to initial reports, the brakes failed. The car veered off the road, colliding with the guardrail before rolling down a ravine. First responders said it was instantaneous. That she felt no pain. That she didn't suffer. But the people who loved her weren't comforted. Especially not her daughter. Steffy Forrester stepped out of the black car, her face pale but composed, her movements robotic. She hadn't been back in LA. For months, she had left to escape the toxicity, the betrayals, the endless loop of family wars. She left to heal. But grief has a way of dragging people home, whether they're ready or not. Now she was back, and her mother was gone. As she approached the casket, her fingers trembled, but her expression didn't falter. She didn't cry, not yet. She knelt beside the casket as Ridge stood in silent agony, barely holding himself together. Behind them, Thomas hovered with hollow eyes. Brooke stood a few feet away, silent, her grief layered in regret and confusion. The family looked broken, but it was Steffy who noticed what no one else seemed to want to acknowledge. Something didn't feel right. The reports were clean. Too clean. The details were vague. No weather issues. No mechanical records on file that indicated brake failure. And then there was Sheila. Always Sheila. The woman had disappeared again. Faded into the background after her last public breakdown. But Steffy knew better than to assume Sheila Carter was ever truly gone. And this? This smelled like her. The timing. The method. The eerie silence after Taylor's death. There had been no warning, no goodbye, no sign of anything wrong. And yet Taylor was dead. Steffy kept her suspicions to herself, for the moment. She watched Ridge closely as he gave a eulogy through clenched teeth, barely managing to speak her mother's name without crumbling. But even in his pain, he avoided certain words. He didn't mention the crash. He didn't question anything. And that silence told Steffy everything she needed to know. Ridge knew more than he was admitting. After the funeral, back at the Forrester estate, the tension was unbearable. The house was filled with mourners, but the air was cold. Steffy moved through the crowd like a ghost, her grief tightening into something sharper. Her voice was low when she finally cornered Ridge in the study. "Tell me what happened." Ridge looked up, exhausted. "You know what happened. It was an accident." "No," Steffy said. "That's what they're calling it. I'm asking what really happened. I saw the reports. The timeline doesn't add up. The car had just been serviced a week before. Taylor doesn't drive recklessly. She was careful. And you haven't said her name since the burial." Ridge's jaw tightened. He looked away, then back at her, his voice rough. "Don't start down this road, Steffy. You don't want what's at the end of it." She stepped closer. "What aren't you saying? Is it Sheila?" The silence that followed wasn't long, but it was enough. Ridge didn't answer. Instead, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder. Inside were photos from the scene. Traffic cam footage. Forensic reports. Things the family wasn't meant to see. He handed them to her with a heavy hand. "I can't prove anything," Ridge said. "But I know what I feel. And I know what your mother told me before she died." "What did she say?" "She said Sheila had been following her. She said she felt watched." Steffy's breath caught. "She was scared," Ridge continued. "But she didn't want to bring it up again. She thought she could handle it. That if she ignored Sheila, she'd disappear. But she was wrong." Steffy's grief twisted into rage. Sheila had haunted them for years. Stolen lives. Destroyed families. Manipulated. Threatened. Vanished. Returned. Always circling like a vulture over every moment of happiness they dared to have. And now she had taken her mother. "She needs to pay," Steffy said, her voice trembling. "No more protecting her. No more waiting for proof. I want her gone." Thomas, who had quietly entered the room during the conversation, nodded in agreement. "We end this. We do whatever it takes." Ridge sighed. "We have to be smart. We don't have enough to go to the police. But we can't let her get away with this." Again, the Forrester family had been through war before, but this was different. This wasn't about business. This wasn't about love triangles or scandal. This was murder. And for Steffy, it was personal. The next day, she visited the crash site herself. The cliffside was quiet, marked only by a small cross someone had placed in the dirt. Flowers had begun to wilt under the sun. She stood there, staring at the broken guardrail, the gouge marks in the soil, trying to understand how this spot had stolen the woman who had been her anchor. She knelt and placed a hand on the earth. I swear to you, she whispered. I will find the truth. I will find her, and she will never hurt anyone again. Back in the shadows of LA, someone watched the news coverage of the funeral from a dark motel room. Sheila Carter sat still, her face calm, unreadable. She watched Steffy on screen, dressed in black, face pale but defiant, and her lips curled into something between a smile and a warning. Careful, little girl, she murmured. You don't know what game you've started. The war between Sheila Carter and the Forrester family was far from over. It had just turned deadly. And this time, it was Steffy who would be leading the charge. No more peace. No more tolerance. No more second chances. Justice for Taylor would come, even if Steffy had to burn the world down to get it. The rain had just started again. Sharp, rhythmic drops tapping against the windows of Forrester Creations as Steffy stared down at the forensic report clenched in her hands. Her knuckles were white, her breath shallow, everything inside her stilled, like her body was trying to give her heart a moment to catch up with the truth. But there was no time for processing. No time for shock. Not now. The report was clear. No ambiguity. No chance of misinterpretation. The brake failure that caused Taylor Hayes' fatal car crash wasn't due to wear and tear. It wasn't a manufacturer defect. It wasn't mechanical fatigue. It was deliberate. The brake line had been cut cleanly and precisely with a sharp-edged tool. A human hand had done this. Someone had sabotaged Taylor's car and murdered her. Steffy's fingers trembled as she turned the final page. There it was in black and white, tool incision consistent with wire snips or bolt cutters. No evidence of corrosion or rust at site of failure. Not caused by natural degradation. Someone had killed her mother. The rage came first, flooding through her veins like fire. Then came the clarity. Someone wanted Taylor dead. Someone had stood by that car, unseen, while the rest of the world moved on, and severed the brake line like cutting the thread of a life. This wasn't grief anymore. This was war. She raced down the corridor. Past Thomas. Past Ridge. Past interns who parted like waves in the hallway. She didn't stop until she reached her office, slammed the door shut, and pulled up the security footage from the traffic cam database she had requested days earlier. The footage was grainy, unclear, but there it was. A camera from a nearby intersection picked up Taylor's car parked along the coastal road the night before the crash, and more importantly, it caught the blurred outline of a figure. Female, medium height, standing near the back of the car. Curly, dark hair. The footage was bad, worse than she'd hoped. But even in the smudged pixels, the shape was unmistakable. Steffy froze. Her mind filled in the blanks. The timing, the posture, the hair. It looked like Sheila, but Steffy wasn't the only one digging for answers. Across town, Finn had quietly been following his own trail. One that started when he couldn't ignore the unease growing in the pit of his stomach. The moment Steffy had told him about the forensics, he'd known there was more beneath the surface. So he'd done what doctors rarely had to do outside the operating room. He followed the blood. He'd combed through nearby stores, gas stations, auto repair shops. And finally, he found it. A receipt from a small hardware store near Il Giardino, timestamped just 2 days before the crash. The item? A set of industrial wire cutters. Purchased with a prepaid debit card. No ID, no name, but the cashier remembered something. A woman, alone, sunglasses, quiet, hands shaking. Finn knew it was a stretch. But it placed the murder weapon right next to Sheila's territory. Still, Sheila Carter had an airtight alibi. She had been with Deacon Sharp the night of the crash. CCTV from Il Giardino showed her inside the restaurant. Receipts, timestamps, and Deacon's testimony all matched. It was textbook. Too clean. Too perfect. And Steffy knew it. That's what brought her to Il Giardino that night. No cameras. No lawyers. No press. Just fire in her chest and one name on her mind. She spotted Sheila at the far end of the restaurant, laughing with a customer, too comfortably. Like a woman who had escaped justice one too many times. Deacon hovered nearby, polishing glasses behind the bar, pretending not to see the storm walking toward them. Sit, Steffy ordered, her voice low and lethal. Sheila turned, eyes wide but unreadable. Steffy, I'm working, I don't care. Sit, now. Sheila hesitated, then slowly slid into the booth. Steffy dropped the folder on the table. Inside, the forensic report, the receipt, a still frame of the blurry figure on the traffic cam. No more lies, Steffy said. You were there, Sheila. Don't insult me. Sheila's face twitched. That's not proof. I don't need proof. I have you. I know how you operate. You disappear, and death follows. My mother is dead because someone cut her brakes. And someone who looks like you was caught on camera near the crash site. Coincidence? Deacon appeared from the side, his face tense. Steffy, come on. Sheila was here that night. I was with her. The whole night. We have cameras, timestamps, everything. Yeah, Steffy said, standing up slowly. About that, she turned to him. What if I told you someone told you to say that? Deacon blinked. What? You got a call, didn't you? She pressed. Someone told you to keep Sheila close that night. Told you she needed an alibi. You didn't question it. You just did what they said. Deacon's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Steffy's eyes narrowed. You did get a call. Deacon sat down hard, ran a hand through his hair. It was anonymous, he finally said. Blocked number. I didn't think it meant anything at the time. They just said to make sure Sheila was on camera that night. Said someone might try to pin something on her. Said it was a setup. Steffy's voice dropped. And whose voice was it, Deacon? He didn't answer. She leaned in closer. You remember. You know who it was. Don't lie to me. Deacon stared at her, then at Sheila, then back down at the table. Finally, he whispered the words. It sounded like Lee. The room spun. Steffy stepped back like she'd been punched. Lee Finnegan. Finn's adoptive mother. A woman who had long-standing issues with Sheila. A woman who hated chaos. Who believed in control. Who wanted to protect Finn from all things toxic, including his biological mother. But sabotage? Murder? It didn't make sense. Until it did. Because Taylor had started getting close again. Not just to Ridge, but to Sheila's orbit. Taylor had advocated for Sheila's access to Finn, tried to help her reconnect. Lee had made it clear, time and again, that she wanted nothing to do with Sheila. Wanted Sheila gone, buried, erased. Could Lee have gone too far? Could she have decided to end the cycle by framing Sheila and removing Taylor in the process? Steffy turned back to Sheila, but for once, Sheila looked just as stunned. You think Lee did this? Sheila whispered. Steffy didn't respond. Her entire world tilted. Everything she thought she knew about right and wrong. About justice and evil. About who to trust. It all blurred. She turned and walked out without another word, the weight of a new truth building in her chest. This wasn't just about her mother anymore. It was about who was capable of killing in the name of control. And who was willing to let someone else take the fall. Back at the cliff where Taylor had died, the wind picked up, tossing Steffy's hair across her face as she stared at the broken guardrail one more time. She looked down at the rocks below, her fists clenched. Whoever did this, Sheila, Lee, or someone else, was going to pay. And this time, Steffy wouldn't stop until every single truth was dragged into the light. Even if it shattered everything left in her family. Even if it meant turning against people she once loved. Justice for Taylor wasn't a hope anymore. It was a promise.